Good enough. Stop?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's on or not.
It's on.
Okay. What we're going to talk about is diabetes mellitus, which is 3 times as high in the black community, and it's causing a lot of problems. Diabetes is mostly caused by sugar addiction to white sugar and products that contain white sugar, milk, the pastries, the candies, sodas. All these contribute to damaging the internal organ systems, and the one that causes this damage is the sugar demon here. See, the sugar diabetes causes constipation, it causes irritability, neurotic problems, that's nerve damage. It robs the body of vitamins and minerals. It destroys your teeth, your pancreas, and your kidneys. Now, the symptoms of hyperactivity or attention deficit disorder, also the symptoms of someone who's addicted to sugar, either getting high, which would be the aggressive behavior, or withdrawing from sugar, which would be the passive behavior. A person high on sugar could have angry outbursts, they could be quarrelsome, they could be aggressive, restless, stealing a lot, they could be unaware of a danger because they're so high off the sugar. They could be compulsively aggressive, clumsy because they're not able to coordinate their bodies in the right rhythm. Their handwriting skills are usually changed because of the high, and then when they go into withdrawal from the sugar, that's when you get into the passive behavior, depressed moods, anxious, fearful, stays close to their mother because they feel rather insecure because of withdrawal symptoms, and they have mood swings because their energy is not stabilized because they're going through falling down some steps energy-wise, and they have sleep problems because it takes energy to sleep. These are all kind of withdrawal symptoms of a person going through sugar addiction. But we don't associate it with sugar at all. Now what happens with the sugar, which is a drug by definition, is that it attacks a gland called the pancreas right here. It attacks the pancreas, but also is in this glandular highway. The pineal gland, pituitary, thyroid, thymus, pancreas and spleen, adrenal glands are set on top of the kidney, and the sexual glands. All these glands are in the highway, and they all should be nutritionally balanced, but when one of the glands gets weak, it causes a chain reaction up and down the glandular network. In other words, sugar diabetes taxes the pancreas. In specific, it taxes the melanin centers in the pancreas, which are called the aisles of Langerhans. These are melanin clusters within the pancreas to help us to digest these carbohydrates. And the pancreas gets overtaxed. Let's take a look at what the pancreas looks like. Pancreas is a gland in your body, and basically the pancreas is, as you can see, behind the stomach. This is the stomach here. See the outline of the stomach. Then you have the pancreas here. Then you have the pylorus. Then you have duodenum or duodenum, as some people call it. This is the small intestines. And then you have the gallbladder, and up here you have the liver. And they all feed into this common duct, the small stomach. The pancreas secretes digestive enzymes, pancreatic enzymes, which are alkaline, and the liver secretes digestive enzymes, which are alkaline, called bile, while the stomach secretes the acid enzymes. And all this goes into the duodenum, but the pancreas gets overtaxed when you take drugs. It overtaxes the pancreas and it overtaxes the liver. And the drugs such as sugar, which is isolated and concentrated in the body. When you isolate a food such as the sugar in the orange or the sugar in sugar cane, you pull the sugar out. But if you could just visualize the orange, we have all this water in the orange, all these vitamins and minerals in the orange that are needed for the orange to be in nutritional healthy state, balance. So when you take the sugar out of the orange, the body wants the sugar to be in a nutritional, healthy state. So it wants all the water and all the vitamins and minerals that was in the orange. So it would take these vitamins and minerals out of your body, out of your bones, out of your nerves, out of your muscle, out of your heart, your eyes. And that's why your eyes have problems with vision when you have sugar addiction. Bilberry is the herb used for sugar addiction, as well as eyebright, which helps stabilize the eyes. But nonetheless, this whole glandular highway is taxed, and in specific, the pancreas is taxed because the sugar is a drug, because it's isolated and concentrated and doesn't have the natural vitamins and minerals that it would have if it was in the orange, if it was in the apple, if the sugar was in a watermelon, if the sugar was in its natural state. Let's look a little closer at the pancreas. Maybe a little technical here, this part. But we're looking at the pancreas. The pancreas has the sections to it. It has a tail. It has a head. You see, this part here that you're seeing is the small intestines. So we have the head and the tail of the pancreas. We have ducts inside of it, little veins and arteries. And these little veins and arteries lose their vitality because the sugar causes the moisture, the fluids, and the vitamins and minerals that are in the pancreas to be withdrawn out of it, because the pancreas gets dehydrated, you may say, the veins and arteries. The other gland that is taxed, as I mentioned before, in the glandular highway, is the liver. Let me move that up some for you so you can see it. The liver is on the right side of your body, the liver. The liver deals with toxins, it deals with drugs. All drugs go to the liver: Tylenol, aspirin, sugar, alcohol, atropine, tetracycline. All the drugs go to the liver, and the liver is trying to neutralize the drugs, trying to destroy them so they won't harm the body. So when you're taking a lot of sugar, it overtaxes the liver, so the liver can't do its job thoroughly because it's so busy concentrating on the sugar. There's this drug, the sugar drug itself. Now the liver gets overtaxed, so it can't store enough energy to keep the system stable, and it can't produce enough natural sugars to help your body feed the brain and the heart and the liver. So the sugar has this kind of chain reaction response in your system on that glandular highway that I showed you earlier. Now when you take the sugar out of the sugar cane or out of the orange or apple or the sugar beets, what happens is these nutrients that your body needs are also stripped out in the process. You have the GABA that's taken out, GABA-aminobenzoic acid, which helps people control their behavior. You have the tyrosine that helps you with stress. That's taken out in the processing of sugar. You have the glutamine, which controls behavior. You have pyridoxine, vitamin B6, which helps to transmit nerve messages and is good for stress. It's good for carpal tunnel syndrome. You have the taurine, which is used for anticonvulsive to help you having these what they call temper tantrums in children. You have phenylalanine, which is used for craving, also used for depression. And of course you have the melatonin, which is good for growth and development and helps increase the resting phase of the body. It's sort of like your blood pressure. You have a number on top and a number down the bottom. The number on top will be your serotonin, and the number down the bottom will be your melatonin. One is for rest and one is for activity. And when you take away all this melatonin, you have what you call an imbalance in the serotonin and melatonin ratio, which causes problems with aggression, stabilizing behavior, growth and development. And we have lysine, which is used for infection, and is used to also keep the body in rhythmicity. And the glycine, of course, is used for anticonvulsants, used for anti-anxiety, that's nervous disorders. It's also tastes rather sweet, and you can sprinkle it on fruits or on cereals for the children to help them control their behavior. All these nutrients are taken out of the food when it's processed in order to get the sugar. When you process flour, the same thing occurs. All the vital nutrients that a child needs to control their behavior, which a person needs also in diabetic conditions, are taken out. So you have nothing controlled your behavior, feed and nourish your brain, because in the processing of the sugar and other refined carbohydrates such as what we call bleached white flour and white flour, all these nutrients that you need are taken out. This wreaks havoc on the body. It puts the body in a crisis condition. It gives the body what we call an adrenaline response. Your body sees the sugar come into the body, into the stomach, and it sees the sugar and it says, I'm in a crisis state, so your body starts firing off what we call adrenaline. And that taxes the adrenal glands, which sits on top of the kidneys. And that causes a person to have kind of fearful, kind of fight and flight kind of moves. They always say, what if? If something happened, they say, oh, this could have happened. A man could have cut off his head. They go into all this fear kind of thing where you're thinking something normal. They see a catastrophe and everything. This is caused simply by the adrenaline response, which can also cause a child to have nightmares at night. As I mentioned before, it's the processing of the food that causes the problem. The processing of the sugar cane and the sugar beets. It gives you the sugar that you eat. The processing that normally should be done is harvesting it, put on a truck and brought to the farmer's market. And that's what we call whole foods. They have not been processed. But when you start processing the food, it processes your health. What I mean by that is processing duplicates your internal organs. One acts like the liver, one acts like the pancreas and spleen, small intestines. And it takes out all the nutrients, and usually they just trash them. The fiber is taken out, bran, you got corn fiber, wheat fiber, rice fiber, all the fiber is taken out in the processing of white sugar, white flour, white rice. So you don't have anything to help you make what we call acidophilus, the natural bacteria. The seeds are taken out, the peel is taken out, and most of the nutrients in the apple is under the skin. And all that's taken out in the processing of the rice, and most of the nutrients in the rice are under the skin. When you take away the skin, you're taking away all these vital nutrients that are needed. And that's when they start putting the sugar in these products that help it to be more addictive, to help you want it more. You put the sugar in the potato chips, the sugar in the salt, they put the sugar in the drugs that you take, the Tylenol, the aspirin. They put sugar in tobacco. They do all this to help the food be addictive so you can keep buying the food so they can keep making money. But the sugar itself causes a pancreas disease known as diabetes mellitus. Now let me show you some more symptoms of this diabetes. Diabetes, or sugar addiction, causes the same kind of things that we call hyperactivity in children. Sugar causes sneezing, year-round stuffiness, watery nose, nose rubbing, that's like a nose salute as we call it, causes the muscles to ache because it's draining the vitamins and minerals out of the muscles that are needed to stabilize it. Then it causes aches in the head, the flat muscles of the skull don't have enough vitamins and minerals in it, so they ache. The back aches, the neck aches, you have growing pains as you call it, or aches unrelated to exercise. That's what we call growing pains. This is caused by sugar. Then because it's a drug, and it taxes the liver and the pancreas and causes the lining of the stomach to get thicker, causes a high acid level in the digestive tract, it causes nausea, upset stomach, bloating. That's when you have gas fermenting in your stomach, which causes belly aches. It causes bad breath because it keeps the food inside the body too long. It slows down the digestive process. And you get all this gas because people combining sugar with things that it does not belong with. We start putting sugar with wheat, sugar with foods that do not need sugar at all. So it causes a crossing of the acid and alkaline balance, which results in a confusion in the digestive tract, which we call gastric stomach. And you get belching, which is regurgitation of the food because it's not being processed properly, and you get diarrhea and constipation. And there's a lot of diarrhea medicine sold in this country, and that's primarily due to the sugar. And the sugar constipates the system, and we have a lot of laxatives sold in America. Laxatives and diarrhea medicine are the largest selling of the over-counter drugs that they sell in drugstores. It also causes the taxing of the kidney. And because it causes adrenaline response or sympathetic nervous system response, we get the bedwetting. get bedwetting, you get daytime wetting, you have a need to rush to the toilet to urinate. You see children just can't wait, and they're running. You have a burning or pain in your urination. All this is caused by the sugar. A person addicted to sugar who has pre-diabetic condition, over 80% of the people in this country are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. They're either going through withdrawal from sugar or trying to get to a sugar, be it chewing gum or soda or the breath mint, or sugar in some form. Because of the addiction, they want to keep sugar close to you. They have sugar all over the place, in train stations and gas stations, so people can constantly feed this sugar addiction, and they don't realize they are addicted to the sugar, because it is a drug, and all drugs are addicting, and all drugs work by destroying melanin. Now, the sugar causes puffiness below the eyes. It causes pale. You see people with darkness below the eyes because the sugar slows down the circulation, and you see this darkness, which is blood stagnation. It causes swelling of the lymph nodes of the neck, which sometimes causes the swelling of the lymph nodes of the mouth, which you call tonsillitis and mumps. Then you have eye problems, ear problems, repeated formation of fluid behind the eardrums, which we call frequent ear infections, ringing of the ears, dizziness, excessive perspiration, and low-grade fevers. All of this is caused by a diabetic condition or pre-diabetic condition, which is basically addiction to sugar. Either you're aggressive because you just had the sugar, or you're going through sugar withdrawal, which we call hypoglycemia. Now, because the sugar is stripping away, remember, it's pulling out the nutrients out of the small veins and arteries, these small ones, and this is the heart, and it's pulling out the nutrients in these small vessels here, which means that they lose their flexibility. They lose their ability to maintain vitamins and minerals. The sugar needs that water. Like I told you before, when you take the sugar out of the sugar beet or the sugar cane, the body says, where's all the water that goes with the sugar? Where's all the vitamins that go with the sugar? So it starts pulling the vitamins and minerals and water out of these small veins, and they get stiff, and then they stop functioning. When they stop functioning, they say you have heart problems, or you're having coronary artery disease, because these small veins and vessels stop functioning properly, and then they start loading up with waste because they're no longer able to get rid of the waste because they've lost their flexibility, and they load up with waste, and then they get occluded or get clogged up, and that stops sections of the heart from getting fed vitamins and nutrients, vitamins and minerals, and so the sections of the heart start dying. Because the sugar's in the blood is not moving fast enough. Then you get blood stagnation. Blood stagnation means that the blood is just moving so slow that it clots. And then this clot blocks the heart's arteries. And people think that they had a blood clot that caused a heart attack. No, they had constipation from eating the sugar, which is usually combined with oils. It makes the blood very heavy, and the blood can't carry enough oxygen and vitamins and minerals. So it's moving very slow, and then it gets slow, and it gets thick, and then it forms a clot, and then it just shuts down the arteries and veins. Let me show you some of the sugars that cause a lot of problems. We have a sugar here that you call sweet and low. Sweet and low has ingredients of dextrose. Dextrose is better known as corn syrup or glucose. Dextrose causes diabetes, it causes cancer, it causes reproductive problems because it's shutting down those small veins and arteries, shutting down the small veins and arteries, causing a lot of waste to accumulate in the system, so it's causing digestive problems, it's causing genetic alterations. Your body isn't able to carry the proper messages to the egg or to the sperm, and then it gets all mixed up, and it causes genetic alterations, which causes mutations. And because the arteries are not able to maintain the proper amount of water and vitamins and minerals, because that's being drawn out by the sugar, they begin to get hard. This decreases the oxygen to the brain and circulation. Now, you have to note this, that the dextrose and glucose or corn syrup, which is all white sugar, contains traces of hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, arsenic, pig and cattle blood, which is used in the processing of white sugar and aspartame. It is 30 times sweeter than white sugar. It increases the weight of food. The sugar pulls water, so they spray sugar on tobacco and other foods so it can hold more water. Because there is sugar that doesn't have that kind of very sweet taste. Then you have, it does not put a label on they don't have to put a label on the product to say it's sugar. Because the Food and Drug Administration says the only official sugar is sucrose. So if you're using dextrose or glucose or corn syrup in your product, you can say that it's sugarless. And let's go to the other ingredients in Sweet and Low. Sweet and Low also contains calcium saccharine, which is made from coal tar, which causes cancer. Coal tar causes digestive disorders, skin problems, blood clotting, and collagen formation problems. Collagen is what we call cellular glue. It helps glue your cells together so you don't get wrinkles in your skin, so you don't look old before your time. Also in Sweet and Low is calcium silicate. This causes respiratory problems, headaches, diarrhea, hives, shock, and eye problems. Calcium silicate is used to make cement and glass. Aspirin is used to make food dye, cosmetics, and it's usually used as an anti-caking agent so that the Sweet and Low won't clump together. Then we have cream of tartar, which causes skin problems, edema, which is holding a lot of excess fluid in your body, in your lungs, in your kidney, which means you're holding more waste, which results in mineral imbalance, which causes your bones to deteriorate. Now, all of this is combined together and called Sweet and Low. It can also contain salt and dyes and emulsifiers and water and other agents as well, but these are the primary agents in, let's see, I want you to see that, the skin, the cream of tartar. These are the primary agents in Sweet and Low. It's a very dangerous sugar, causes the same problems as white sugar. Sweet and Low is very dangerous. Then we get people that are trying to find a safe sugar for themselves, and they go to this other sugar, which is called NutraSweet, which is made from wood alcohol. Wood alcohol causes nerve damage, brain damage, aspartic acid. You have substance in it like formaldehyde, which is basically embalming fluid. This is all in aspartame, which you call NutraSweet. It causes mental confusion, headaches, which actually is a brain ache because the brain is not getting enough oxygen or nutrients because of the sugar. It causes menstruation problems because it lowers the amount of oxygen and nutrients that go to the pelvic girdle. By that I mean the uterus and prostrate. It causes nerve damage. The muscles are not able to get enough calcium and magnesium because it's being stripped away from it by the sugar. So you're getting leg cramps, and those small veins and arteries that I showed you before in the heart, they're in the eyes, and the eyes don't get enough nutrients, and that's why sugar is the leading cause of blindness in this country. Then you get birth defects because of the reproductive organs have small veins and arteries, and they're not getting enough nutrients, and that causes problems on pregnancy. And you have cancer, which is when the cells lose over 60% of their oxygen, genetic mutations, and alterations in the brain chemistry, which causes alterations in your mood and thoughts, which leads to mood and thought disorders, which is commonly called schizophrenia. That's what aspartame causes. Then we get to another sugar, which is very popular. We get to this other sugar known as honey. All of these sugars cause diabetes mellitus. It still causes, if it doesn't tax the pancreas directly, it attacks the liver. We have aspartame, which is toxic to the liver. You have NutraSweet, which is toxic to the liver. You have white sugar, which is toxic to the pancreas. And you have fructose, fruit sugar, which is toxic to the liver, and sucrose, which is toxic to the pancreas. So with honey, you're getting two sugars that are damaging your system. So what does this honey cause? It causes kidney fatigue and disease, blood vessel damage, hardening of the arteries, gouty arthritis, heart attacks, strokes, periodontal disease of teeth and gums. It contributes to uterine fibroids, endometriosis, cystic mastitis, breast problems, uterus problems, prostate problems. You have stomach ulcers that are caused by honey, liver and adrenal glands get larger and get damaged. The pancreas shrinks and deteriorates and increases blood fat. It increases the uric acid, which eats away your vitamins and minerals and helps cause a condition known as arthritis or gouty arthritis. It destroys the balance in your cholesterol, alters, increases the triglycerides, your cortisones, your blood levels of insulin. It causes mood and thought disorders and hyperactivity. All sugars cause hyperactivity. All sugars cause damage to the small veins and arteries. Peripheral circulation decreases and your feet and legs will eventually rot off. It does cause blindness, all sugars. What we're trying to do is eat the sugar in its natural state. Now, because diabetes mellitus is related to sugar, it's also related to addiction and overeating, as I mentioned before. It is stripping the body of the vital vitamins and minerals that it needs. So we have to treat a person who's addicted to sugar the same way we treat a person who is addicted to eating. It's an overeating disease because they put the sugar in everything to cause you to get addicted to everything that they sell. So we need to increase the magnesium, we need to get zinc, we need to get chromium, selenium, arginine and ornithine, which are growth hormones. We need GABA-aminobenzoic acid, serotonin, which is produced by your melanin or pineal gland. We need all of these nutrients to get away from this addiction. It's a craving. Now, let me show you in specific what I'm talking about, the ones that can really help you with the addiction. We're trying to repair the pancreas. We're trying to do something with this addiction here. This is what we need to work on. This is what I use. Now with the sugar addiction, the vanadyl sulfate, which is the one up top, vanadyl sulfate, it alone can cure the person of pancreas disease or sugar diabetes. Diabetes refers to urinating a lot. When you urinate a lot, you lose a lot of glucose and you lose a lot of minerals. Anyone that has a sugar disease or diabetes mellitus or pre-diabetic condition needs to take extra minerals because they're just urinating them away. They're peeing away their vitamins and minerals. So vanadyl sulfate it helps to repair the pancreas, and it will get a person off of insulin within 6 months. It usually takes about 4 over the years that I've been using it. 4 months you can come off insulin. Chromium can do the same thing. You can take them separately or in combination. Chromium picolinate, I believe, is popularly sold. These two alone can help a person get off of insulin and, of course, repairs the damage to the pancreas. Now, when you get into the herbal fare, bilberry is used to help a person get off of insulin and helps repair the damage done to the pancreas. And it's also sometimes called huckleberry. Now, to help a person who is diabetic or pre-diabetic, we need to control that craving for that sugar. And what's used for craving is chickweed. So we would take the bilberry with the chickweed to help the person with the craving for the sugar. This is for the sugar. This is for the craving. Now, golden seal makes something called inulin, which is a precursor for the hormone called insulin. Now, insulin is what is used to break down the carbohydrates. That's why people take insulin injections, because they lack the amylase, which is the enzyme that breaks down starches. It's called amylase. And a person with diabetes has an amylase deficiency, so they need that digestive enzyme called amylase. This is provided by taking bilberry or taking a precursor to that called golden seal, which turns into inulin, and inulin turns into insulin. So we will use bilberry, chickweed, golden seal, and St. John's wort to help the trigger the pineal gland and also to help with the depression that is caused from withdrawal from sugar. But the primary treatment, if you have like all 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, we would use a teaspoon of each herb, is what you need for 1 cup of the herb. But you need 4 times as much bilberry as you do the rest of these. So you would use 4 teaspoons of bilberry, 1 of chickweed, 1 of golden seal, 1 of St. John's wort. Now if you really have a craving, you may want to go 4 teaspoons of bilberry, 2 of chickweed, 1 of golden seal, 1 of St. John's wort. This is the ratio I'm trying to give you. 4, 2, 1, and 1. A person with a sugar craving also has a yeast infection. When the yeast needs some food, they want some sugar. A yeast infection alone will cause you to crave sugar. So we have to treat the yeast infection. That's usually done with a herb called por diaco. That's the herb that's used for yeast infection. The person with sugar diabetes, or diabetes mellitus, or sugar disease as we call it, also has worms. The golden seal would help with the worms, so I'm not worried about that. Garlic is also good for worms as well. Glycine is used because it helps the person control their behavior. I use that with hyperactive children as well. And it's naturally sweet. You can sprinkle that on food. And let's look at that again. We use vanadil sulfate. It helps repair the pancreas, and it's used for diabetes mellitus. Chromium picolinate is also used. You can combine these two together. They're sold together in a health food store. That's on the supplement side. On the herbal side, we're using bilberry. 4 teaspoons of bilberry for each teaspoon of chickweed, golden seal, and St. John's wort. That will help a person get off of this sugar addiction. Bilberry will do it alone. It helps a person get off of insulin injections, as well as the vanadil sulfate. We also have to treat the yeast infection and worms, and to help control the behavior, or as a natural sweetener instead of the honey and the white sugar, we use glycine. Now the intricacies of this disease is that what happens is that all the systems get involved, as I mentioned before. That's what makes it so complex, because it attacks the whole system. You have the pineal gland, the pituitary, the thyroid, the thymus, the adrenal glands, the liver, the ovaries. All these organs get weakened by the sugar. Therefore, a company that specializes in helping to get you addicted to foods will focus on the solar kind of colors. They will use a lot of yellow, green, and orange in their packaging. They will compose songs, jingles that focus around the musical note E and F. They will use the numbers 3 and 8 and 4 in the design in some way, and they will use these letters to name their product in some way, because it focuses on what they're trying to get you addicted to. The liver works with the adrenals, and the adrenals work with the kidneys, which means it works with the reproductive system. We have complementary systems. We have this system that complements this system. So they would focus on the color orange and the musical note D and the number 2 and 9 and these letters in their product, because they're trying to get you addicted to their food so they can keep the money out of your pocket and keep the money in their pocket. Now, a person addicted to sugar would have a craving, a sweet tooth, as you call it. It's all right to have a sweet tooth if you're African, because you're from a tropical country that had a lot of sweet fruits there. And the mangoes, papayas, oranges, plums, cherries, apples, the host of sweet fruits in Africa. So it's natural for you to have a sweet tooth. What is unnatural is for you to be exploited by it, by the food industry. So they put sugar on everything. They put sugar in ketchup, sugar in mustard, sugar in mayonnaise, sugar in drugs, sugar in Tylenol, sugar on salt. Sugar's in everything. Sugar sprayed on tobacco. Sugar's in beer. They put sugar in everything so it can make you addicted to the food so they can keep the money out your pocket and keep the money in their pocket. Now we get down here on the chart, and you see how each zodiac sign controls a certain organ or section of your body. You see we have the kidneys again, which means the adrenal glands and the pancreas. So we have the note D in yellow, and we have the complementary organs, the kidneys, the heart, the pancreas, the spleen, the reproductive organs, all this involved in the packaging of merchandise to get you addicted to it. Now, on a mental plane, when you look at this holistic chart, which is in the book African Holistic Health, you'll see that when we're dealing with the pancreas and kidney, spleen and liver, we're dealing with the segregation of thoughts. You're able to use your linear side of your brain, and you're able to put them all together in a holistic fashion, in an African kind of fashion. But you can't synthesize those thoughts, yet these glands have been damaged by sugar. Kidney, pancreas, spleen, and liver, which are damaged by sugar. It causes you to lose the ability to synthesize or holistically balance your thoughts. It taxes your respiratory system and your hearing, of course, and your complementary system, your reproductive system. As I mentioned before, there are melanin-dominant centers in the pancreas, and when you have any melanin-dominant kind of system, it's going to bind chemicals to it. Drugs get bind to it. All these drugs that you see are bound to the melanin. The melanin in the liver, the brain, the reproductive system, pancreas, all of them get weakened by drugs. Codeine, morphine, caffeine, nicotine, all these are drugs bind to your melanin. That's what happens in the case of sugar diabetes. It's the melanin centers in the pancreas that get damaged. The Isles of Langerhans, those are melanin centers in the pancreas. But with that sugar addiction, we get this compulsive overeating that goes with sugar diabetes. You want things that turn into sugar quickly, such as potato chips and bleached white flour products. You want those. And it causes compulsive overeating. You always want something sweet or something that turns into sugar very quickly, which means it turns into alcohol very quickly. So you have a craving for potato chips. The food industry is structured in such a way that they don't want you to eat the potato because they can't make any money. They want you to eat the potato chip. They don't want you to eat corn because they can't make any money. So they want you to eat the corn chips, the tortillas, corn fritters, cornbread, but not the corn itself because they cut out their way of making money. So people become obsessed with food. They eat one meal and they're thinking about the next. And they either have low insulin production or hyperinsulin production. A person with hyperinsulin produces too much insulin because they have been eating too much sugar will eat the same amount of food as someone else, but they'll gain weight because they have hyperinsulin. They're producing too much insulin because they've taxed their pancreas with this white sugar, or honey, or aspartame, or NutraSweet, or bleached white flour, or potato chips, or beer, anything that has this sugar in it, it taxes the pancreas. And it becomes a mental disease, which is called compulsive overeating. As I mentioned before, the sugar, when it's processed, is stripped of all the nutrients you need. It's stripped of it, totally. And these nutrients and starch, bleached white flour, and white sugar turn to alcohol very quickly in the system. That's why we end up treating the alcoholism and the addiction the same way. Here's the chromium again that I showed you earlier. The glutamine is destroyed by heat in the processing of food. The B vitamins, which are used for your nervous system, which are taken out by processing sugars, sugar in sugar cane, the sugar in sugar beets. The vitamin C, which is destroyed by heat. All these nutrients you need to control your behavior so you won't be addicted to sugar are taken out in the processing. You have to replenish them and stop penalizing people for having a nutritional disease called diabetes mellitus, penalizing them and calling it mental illness or hyperactivity. Look, I just want to show you what's in malt liquor and beer. We're back to that same addicting ingredient. Aside from having these alcohols in it, we have the wood alcohol, the starch alcohol, the petroleum alcohol, the natural gas alcohol, all of which kills the nerves and damages the brain and the organs and the reproductive system. And then we have this white sugar to make it addicting. People are just guaranteeing their market. But by guaranteeing their market, they're also guaranteeing the destruction of your pancreas. Eventually, if you eat sugar, You're going to damage your pancreas, and of course you're going to eventually cause peripheral circulation damage, which means that your feet, your legs, and extremities will rot because they won't be able to get enough air, because those small veins and arteries are damaged. They become smaller, they become stiff, they begin to pack waste in them, they get occluded, get blocked, and your eyes start going, your hearing starts going, and all this is the cost you pay for just eating white sugar. It's very addicting, it's white, and we should stay away from it. You should try to eat things that have color in it, and that way you can ensure that you won't get this disease called diabetes mellitus. Eat brown sugar. Right? It has color? No. Brown sugar is white sugar with caramel color on it. It's still a sugar. You want to eat brown rice, you want to eat whole wheat, you want to eat yellow grits, you want to eat corn, it's yellow. You want to eat the food in its natural state so you can keep your pancreas in its natural state. And understand that diabetes mellitus is curable. It's just a matter of staying away from the sugars. You'll have all kinds of reactions from the sugar and not know that you're having sugar reactions. You can have mood swings, as I mentioned before. Children can have temper tantrums. They can have violent outbursts. All these are signs and symptoms of a person having withdrawal from sugar or being high on sugar. I just want to go over, once again, we know there are herbs for controlling sugar diabetes. One I want to point out to you is Gymnema sylvestre. That's also used for sugar diabetes, along with the bilberry, as I showed you earlier. Now, what gives you indication that you may be pre-diabetic or diabetic are these symptoms here. Excessive urinating, having to urinate all the time. Every time you eat, you got urinate kind of thing. Excessive urinating, getting up in the middle of the night urinating. Of course, that's also a symptom of the prostate disease as well. And always being thirsty, always having to drink something. Remember, the objective of the sugar industry is to keep the money out of your pocket and keep the money in their pocket, and they can't do it unless something is addicting. So they keep a lot of sugar in their drinks and things of that sort. They addict you to it, so that keeps you thirsty all the time. You drink a lot of sodas or a lot of water, always have to drink and always thirsty. That's an indication of pre-diabetic or diabetic condition. Overeating, because you're not getting the nutrients from your food, remember that, because the sugar, when you urinate, the glucose goes and the minerals go, so you don't have any energy, because you're always urinating out your energy. So you always want to eat, and when you eat, you're not getting enough energy from your food because you have this illness of your pancreas, which doesn't allow you to break down the nutrients in the food. Another sign and symptom of diabetes or sugar disease, as we call it, is gain or loss of weight easily. People that are diabetic lose weight very easily, and the people that have hyperinsulin, which is another form of diabetes, they eat the same amount of food as someone else, but they gain weight because their body's turning the starch into fat before they can use it. The body breaks down the carbohydrates with an enzyme called amylase. Remember I told you that. It breaks that down at such a high rate, so fast, that the person can't get to the energy in the food before the body turns it into fat. So they're gaining weight all the time, but not getting any energy. So they're always eating, not getting enough energy, and turning the energy into fat before they can even utilize it. And now they're not getting enough energy to their brain because the sugar takes away the oxygen to the brain, takes away the minerals, because when the glucose goes, the minerals go. So the person's going to have mood swings, violent outbursts. The child is going to have temper tantrums. They're going to be hyperactive when they have the sugar, and when they're going through withdrawal, they're going to be hypoactive. All of these are combined are the signs and symptoms of a diabetes mellitus or sugar disease. The thing to combat it is just to get away from the refined carbohydrates. That's the main cause of the illness. Remember that. Refined carbohydrates. That's how the sugar demon lives. Takes away your teeth, takes away your vision. It makes the bones get weak because it's pulling out the calcium because it's so acid. It requires the body tries to neutralize the acidity with calcium and strips it out of the bones. So So it causes the bones to deteriorating, and without the calcium, magnesium, the person can't stabilize their nervous system, so they become irritable very easy. They have outbursts, they have these mood swings, they get angry with themselves, they get depressed with themselves, all because of this addiction. It destroys the kidney, as I mentioned before, and of course it weakens the liver. And I hope that you can somehow just see yourself healthy, because you have to see yourself as healthy in order to be healthy. You have to see yourself saying and make an affirmation to yourself that I'm going to do better today. I'm going to eat no sugar today. I'm going to eat fruits. I'm going to drink water. I'm going to stay away from the sodas. I'm going to stay away from the candy. Don't even put it near you. Don't go to places where there's a lot of sweets. When you go to the restaurant, just skip over the dessert section. Don't order a lot of sweets. You have to go step by step with this addiction. Start getting rid of the sugar. Start getting rid of those sweet things that you eat, the cakes, the candy, the chewing gum. Realize that you're a junkie. You're totally out of control, and you're addicted to sugar. And like any junkie, when you don't have your sugar, you're allowed to do anything and say anything. You're going through withdrawal. So you have to be conscious of that stuff and realize you're under treatment when you're addicted to sugar. You're dangerous to yourself and you're dangerous to other people because of the mood swings you have and the irrational things that you say because you don't have your drug in you. Sugar addiction is the primary addiction in this country. People get addicted to sugar first, then they get addicted to cocaine, then they get addicted to alcohol, then they get addicted to tobacco or heroin. They get addicted to sugar first. That pulls them into the addictive process and allows them to develop this addictive behavior, which flows into the other addictions very easy. So we have to tackle this sugar diabetes, sugar diabetic, or sugar disease as we call it, with the herbs, the bilberry, with the supplements, the vanadyl sulfate, the chromium, and doubling your mineral supply because you're flushing out a lot of minerals in the process with this sugar disease. And I hope that gives you some pointers on how to be healthy and to stay healthy. Stay away from these white things. Thank you.